welcome to the Racers HQ podcast. I'm your host, Matt Murphy, and joining me on the line tonight, we have our dedicated co-host, Pat Mullery. Pat, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking, Matt Murphy.
Lovely. Are you drinking anything tonight, Mr. Mullery?
I am once again drinking iced tea.
The drink of champions. I like it.
That's right. That's right.
All right, and then we've got a really exciting guest, 2023 OK SCCA Racer of the Year, Brian Sommers. Brian, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great tonight. How are you doing?
Doing all right, man. Love to have you on the show tonight. You drinking anything?
Diet Coke is what I've got in my glass in front of me here tonight.
Diet Coke for the win. All right.
How about you, Matt Murphy?
Me? Oh, well, I am. I'm playing a little easy tonight. I got a little sip of sake. I like to keep some cheap sake around. It's keep it cold, and a little
Very
LaCroix.
exotic.
A little LaCroix. But I do have to tell you real quick story about last night. We went to the Lunar Lounge, which is a really cool speakeasy in Midtown OKC. There's like literally a button on a wall in an office building, and the door opens up, and it's like lunar themed, like retro lounge. But I made the perfect decision here. I asked the bartender, "Hey man, what kind of vermouth are you putting in those Manhattans?" And he got so excited about the topic of vermouth. And next thing you know, we had like 3 vermouth flights in front of us. And then he made us like a Manhattan with like a rye and mezcal Manhattan with one of those fancier vermouths, the one with like kind of the blonde label that I got us into that one time. So yeah, it was just like the best question to ask a bartender. Just get all the vermouth samples for what it's worth.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. And the mezcal really added a bunch of, it was like Flavor Town. The end. Okay.
That's really interesting. I never would have thought of putting mezcal in that.
Ever. No, it blew my mind. Yeah, but it was lovely. Mullery, did you do anything in your garage over the last week or two?
Yeah, so got the engine pretty much completely assembled, I think.
Yeah.
Ready to take it off the stand, and that'll be Saturday. Put the hoist on it and drop it off the stand. And I bought a few weeks ago, a couple months ago actually, one of those hydraulic lift tables that they sell at Harbor Freight, and because I saw somebody moving blocks around on that, and I was like, that is really smart and like much better than like cheap wooden dollies or something like that, which has always been the use case for me in the past. And so like the more I thought about it, I'm like, that's going to make putting this transmission on here so much easier, because usually like the engine's like wanting to roll all around, you're trying to stab the transmission in and all that crap, and this way I can just put the block on the hydraulic table and lift it up and strap it down so it's not moving. And so hopefully that's not just best laid plans, right? But that's the plan. So hopefully get that done on. If I can get that done on Saturday, then on Sunday I could get to work on actually, moving the engine back into the chassis.
Sweet.
So very exciting. And thank you, by the way, for getting the fuel injectors cleaned out by your friendly neighborhood fuel injector cleaner. I appreciate that.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick. So the plan was Mullery's going to ship us all the injectors, like 2 sets. And we were going to have Deshworks do the cleaning, or sorry, the testing, right? Because you get them tested first and then see if you need cleaning. The testing cleans them. And I call them and they're like, no, we don't do that anymore. But we got a guy that does that. And so I text this guy on the south side, and he's like, yeah, I'll do that. And then he's just like, yeah, I'll just go back up to Deshworks and do it on their bench. I'm like, but anyway, so he's just like an employee at Deshworks, but they don't officially do it anymore, right? So, but yeah, $10 an injector, not bad. And he said the cleaning process sorted out 2 of those injectors. So,
oh, good. Well, that explains 2 of those. If it was 2 of the injectors, I'm guessing it was the 2 that we saw the
pitting.
The pitting and the running lean in. So
yeah,
good.
So yeah,
it looks like he kind of flow matched them too in the 2 different sets. So that was nice.
Nice, work.
Yeah,
so, very cool.
So big hats off to guy on the south side of Oklahoma City who can do fuel injector cleaning on the side.
Yeah, It's called
thank you.
Alex or Aaron
Thanks,
or something.
Guy.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah.
Guy. But I got his deets. If we need, PM me if you need to get a hold of this guy to clean your injectors.
That's what we got
Um,
socials for.
Yeah. Um, I found out. I was having this rattle in my Honda motor in my Miata, like right when you started up, and I was like, that sounds bad. That sounds like a failure coming up. So I started like looking up YouTube videos, right, of people with this rattle. And after you get all the like past all the flat brim bro like intro to like K24 Civic Si videos, they tell you that it's like this VTC actuator. But anyway, $200 part. It's basically a cam gear on the intake. And I think I saved myself a lot of headache though. But just pro tip, if you're building one of these motors, you might as well just do that. If you're getting like an 80,000 mile junkyard motor, that thing usually goes out at 100,000. So after like, a dozen weekends on the track and $80,000 or 80,000 mile motor, it was inevitable. So
Yeah.
just get that VTC cam gear done in the first place.
Yo.
Yeah. And I don't mind a flat brim hat. It's just like more the video style, but I digress. Anything else going on in the garage, Pat? Sorry, I feel like I cut you off.
No. No. I mean, that's
good.
mostly
Good progress, though.
what's been is just getting that back together, and like really just trying to pay very close attention. Not that we didn't always, but just extra close attention, I guess, because we haven't done it in a couple of years, and making sure everything's just lined up just right and everything's torqued, and like this is new. I've never torque marked like every bolt as it goes back in on the outside of the motor, but I did it this
smart.
time. Yeah.
Nice.
So just trying to
Small
trying to get it
improvements.
to where it's little things that'll maybe add up a little bit and get us a little bit more reliability out of it. So
Heck yeah. Well, awesome, man. Well, good updates from the team. I think we need to move on to our special guest. I've known Brian for a while now, and done some autocross. Our former co-host Nathan Adler introduced me to Brian because they were autocrossing together. And then it was like when it came time for us to start hanging out at Hallett, it was like, oh, Brian's the guy that's got the reservation on the raceport. We need to hang out with that guy.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, but Brian, we'd love to hear about you. We'd love to hear how you got into racing, some of your antics in the Legends series, and then this new gig you got going on that you were so excited to tell us about when we were up there last time. You've been doing some professional spotting, so yeah. Just tell us a little bit about your path, and I'm sure we'll have questions along the way.
All right. Well, I'm here in Choctaw, Oklahoma, so that makes Hallett my home track here. How did I get started into auto racing?
Yeah.
Let's back up to about 1985. My dad retired from the Air Force. We lived in the Florida Panhandle, Fort Walton Beach.
Okay.
And he said, I'm going to build a dirt track car. He'd been racing before. Back in the 60s, he raced up in New York. And the one thing I remember about this is we had a neighbor down the street, had a 67 Chevelle, I think, had a small block Chevy in it.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad went down to help him one time, and I wandered around. I was probably 8 or 9 years old at the time, and trying to get that Chevy small block running a little better. And it just sounded mean, Chevy small block, a Chevelle, classic car look. I was like, this is nice. And walking away, my dad made the comment. He goes, "Yeah, that's not really much of a car. I could bore out that 302 in your mom's Fairmont station wagon and make it sound better."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like 8 years old. I'm like, yeah, I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
Well, fast forward a few years there to 85. And wouldn't you know, the car that got drug out of the junkyard was a 78 Ford Fairmont Futura. I don't know if you're familiar with the body style of the two-door Futura, but Bob Glidden ran them dragster style back in the 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
So that car got drug out of the junkyard with a front end collision on it and pulled the straight six out. And wouldn't you know, we found a little 302 and bored it 40 over and matched the rules for a street stock class. And I'll be damned if Dad didn't live up to his word, because that 302 sounded pretty mean.
Nice.
So here I am at 13 years old. Dad built the car. Dad raced the car. Occasionally on a Wednesday night practice night, one car on the track at a time. 14 years old, and got to do a few laps on the dirt track, and turned into just probably about every other Wednesday night, we'd head up to the practice night, and I'd do 20 or 30 laps or so, and he'd do a few laps, and and call it a night. He'd come back, race Saturday night. So that turned into about 3 days after my 16th birthday, before I even had a license on the street. Starting there on a dirt track. The track was Gateway Raceway in Milton, Florida.
Okay.
Not to be confused with the Gateway Speedway of St. Louis and that area up there.
Mhm.
That track, by the way, Gateway is closed out right now. It closed out about 91, 92. Just down the street is Southern Raceway in Milton. I ran that track also. But, just 3 days after
Milton's
my
not big enough
16th
to
birthday.
support. Milton's not big enough to support two competing racetracks within a rock's throw of each other.
That is correct. Absolutely. Milton is about as big as you think it is if you haven't heard of it before, but it's down the road from Pensacola. So you've also got Five Flags at the time was pretty popular for asphalt racing on Friday night. So two dirt tracks, both trying to compete on Saturday nights, about a mile and a half away from each other. Just didn't work out.
Yeah.
So
did your dad grow up? Did your dad grow up in a racing family?
I don't believe so. He did grow up around cars. My grandfather actually owned a Standard service station back before Standard turned into Amoco.
Okay.
So that was back in the early 60s. But there's car interest. There's car interest in the family, not car racing so much. But he was out in New York, where the Air Force stationed him in 67, and ran a year or two out there before parking the car in a barn when the Air Force moved him to Two Harbors, Minnesota, which is where I came along into the family. But shortly after the time in Two Harbors is when the Air Force moved him down to the Florida Panhandle and kind of stayed there through his career. So my memory of my first heat race started 4 cars in basically hobby class or street stock style race, and got done with it. I finished third out of 4 cars, and I'm walking through the pits. One of our neighbors happened to be there, also ran in the same class, and he comes running up to me as I get out of the car. He goes, "Stand here a minute." He grabs my right foot, grabs my ankle of my right foot, and picks it up. And I'm like, I don't know what he's looking at, so I pick it up. He goes, "That's your damn problem. That foot's too light. You better stand on that gas better and get out there." Like, okay. So,
Brian, I have to ask a necessary question for this story. What were the safety standards like back then when you were getting going racing as a teenager?
the car did have a roll cage. It was put in by a professional welder. Did not
Okay.
stand up to any standards of anything you think nowadays.
Yeah.
This 78 Ford Futura 2-door car with a unibody on it, with the roll cage in it, crossed over the scales at 3,500 pounds because it was all pipe. It wasn't tubing, it was pipe. The roll cage wasn't going anywhere. And the unibody was tied together fairly well front to back. It was solid. There was no crunch zones in this thing. And as far as the seat goes, the seat was actually out of a 1982 Ford Mustang, like straight to the point that we had to belt the back of the seat to keep from coming forward because it was a stock seat. And at the time, those 80s Mustang seats, they were G-force activated to keep them from coming forward. You didn't have the latch to open up and get in the back seat. You just pulled it forward if you wanted to. So had a 5-point harness, which I think the 5-point harness we ran for the first 2 or 3 years was a harness that came out of a C-130 that my dad somehow got a hold of. I'm not sure. Safety standards, they did require a helmet. I'm not sure if they even required dot stickers on it or anything. I know Snell wasn't a word that was heard of. So you go through and things have changed a little bit. Most definitely.
Son, is that a football helmet on your head? Yes. It just said helmet. Fair enough.
That's right.
Get on out there.
Very
You
cool.
got a schedule 40 cage. That's good enough for us.
Absolutely. 3 or 4 bars in each door, rollover protection, go have at it.
I love it.
I mean, the racetrack didn't have any steel walls to hit anyways. It had a dirt berm on the front stretch and all kinds of place to go off the back stretch.
Nice.
Then we get to Southern and, 5-6 years later, still have the same car and Southern had a concrete wall down the front stretch. That changes things a little bit.
Yeah.
So ran back and forth with my dad through early '90s. Tried my hand one time at Five Flags, so I have been on the track there. Got a car, an actual race car type. Had already had the cage in it. Was sitting in a junkyard,
Okay.
and I'm pretty sure it was about a 75, 76 Dodge Dart, Plymouth Roadrunner type body. Again, one of those cars that had been wrecked in the front end, and I worked in a welding shop at the time, so I figured I could patch that up. Got out there on the track with it, and got one night in. Really horrible. Did not understand how to drive asphalt. Tried to drive into the corners way too deep, and I think that it's going to stick, and it didn't. World of difference between dirt and asphalt.
Sure.
Tried to go back a second time, and as we're loading the car up on the trailer, last minute checks at home before leaving, found out the radiator was low on water. Started to fill it up, and the water just came straight out of the tailpipe. That ended everything for that car. So
nice.
Yeah, that's an alternate exit path.
Right. Normally, water going in the radiator should not come out of the exhaust pipe.
Been there, yeah.
So did you even bother pulling the engine down just to find out why?
True to form of get to the track at all cost. We're sitting in the driveway, and I threw like 10 or 15 bucks at a friend that was sitting there. He said, "Go to AutoZone, buy me a head gasket." We pulled the intake off, pulled the head off, saw that the gasket was broke. I'm like, "Yep, no problem." I mean, this is the early '90s. Cell phones weren't a thing, so told him get a head gasket for a 318, and that was it. We're looking at it, trying to get things cleaned up, to throw a head gasket and intake manifold set on it, and lo and behold, we look, and there's 3 of the cylinders have cracks running from the spark plug hole over to the exhaust valve. So at that point, we called it a night, said, what are we going to do? I think somehow I had a 340 sitting around that I stole the heads off of, or maybe put in there or something. Tried for one more night. I think we rained out before we even got there, and at that point traded off. That car went out to Santa Rosa County somewhere. I'm pretty sure I traded it for a pickup truck. Pickup truck sat around at mom and dad's place for who knows, and then that disappeared too.
Yeah.
But
so you do a circle track in the '90s, and then you get back out there, or?
Well, 93. Let me make sure I got my days right on this. Yeah, 93. October '93. A couple things happened in my life. Got married and joined the Air Force. So the Air Force sent me up to Omaha, Nebraska to Offutt. Stayed up there for a while, and when our daughter was 8, 9 years old, looked around for something because I still had that desire for, passing on something. Looked around, and I was trying to find a go-kart for my daughter. Come across an eBay ad. Long before Facebook Marketplace and all that stuff, we had to look on eBay and filter results, that all this stuff. Found an ad for this really large go-kart, and looked at it, and I'm like, that's not just a go-kart. There's got to be something else to this. As the internet was there in, what would that have been, about 2000, 2001? Right. Searched around, found out that these things were actually called mini cup cars. Mini cup cars, about the size of a Bandolero.
Yep.
Just under 4 foot wide, right about 9 foot long. But the difference with a Bandolero and a mini cup from the outside look is the mini cup looks like a full blown NASCAR car from the '90s. There's no rub rails on the front and back. Powered by a little Honda GX390, which is your 13 horse generator motor. Went and looked at this and said, man, that looks kind of cool. And found out there was a place about an hour and a half away in Jamaica, Iowa, that was racing these cars. So went out and looked at it, and the guy out there looked and said, well, you don't want to buy that one. That one's an old rigid chassis. There's no suspension on it. What we're running here has suspension, so you've got your spring rates, you've got all these other things, and they're better, and all this. And it turned into, I drove one time, and So yeah, okay, but it's really fast for the kids. He goes, oh, don't worry about it. We got restrictor plates to put on them for the kids.
Mm.
All right. So, thinking I'm going to go home and talk to the wife about it. I drive home that night and she runs out the garage door. And I think the first thing she said to me is, where is it? And I said, I'm pretty sure we were going to talk about this before we bought anything. She goes, no, I thought you were going to bring it home today. So,
Okay.
so there's a couple times in my life that tells me I married the right woman.
Yeah.
So anyways, a few weeks later, another
You
event.
fishtail out of the driveway right back to go pick it up, right? Like,
I made a phone call that night. I'm like, hey, don't let that thing go to anybody else.
Yeah. It's awesome.
So I drove the car. I actually drove the car twice before I bought it. And again, the whole racing thing. I go out there the day I'm going to pick it up, and he says nothing's changed on the car. Drove it twice, everything's good, and I go back the third time. It's my car now. I go out to drive it, and it doesn't handle it all. This track in Jamaica is a 1/5 mile banked asphalt go-kart track. So these cars have enough tire on them. You're practically going wide open if everything's right. And it just was sliding all over the place compared to where it was before. And I just like, man, what's up with this? So I go back and ask him, like, what did you do to this? He goes, I didn't do anything to it. It's the same car. I'm like, what's the difference? And he said something that I should have thought about at the time, but I didn't. He goes, it rained 3 days ago.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, so it rained 3 days ago. What's the big deal? He goes, it's the first rain we've had in 6 months. That changed they've been running all summer out here.
oh yeah.
Putting rubber down, and that rubber's gone. It rained hard. Okay, so learn how to make adjustments on a car and stuff. Finished up that season. I want to say that was 03, maybe 02. Over the off season, set the car for my daughter. She was 9. Figured she'd step in the car and see what she can do. And got a video of her first lap in the car. She comes to pit roads at turn 4. So coming from pit road or from the pit area out onto the track on the front stretch, she mats the gas, takes off for corner 1 and 2, and doesn't lift, which is which is could have been really bad. Thankfully, the car did slip just a little bit coming out of 2. But the video of her in this car coming out of 2, the back end slides out just a little bit. She stays on the gas and doesn't quite correct it enough. It drives down in the infield in the grass. She yanks back towards the track, and the car slides around backwards now. You still hear that little single cylinder Honda just putting away, doing its best to do something. As finally, as it almost comes to a stop backwards, he lets off the gas. And everybody's laughing about it. I looking back on that, I'm just thankful that it slipped there, because that thing would have picked up so much speed down the backstretch into 3 that I don't know what would have happened. But I learned there that you don't make assumptions about what anybody knows about a race car, because we'd been to go-kart tracks all over the place and doing different things, and it's all good. But her life up to that point, up to being 9 years old, was you hold the pedal on the right all the way down and you turn the steering wheel, and that's what she tried to do.
Gotcha.
So we followed along with the mini cup racing for a couple of years. Air Force moved me around. Eastler in Mississippi, San Antonio. Met a few people along the way. We'll get into this story later, but Mason Mitchell was one of Catherine's competitors. Both kids, 9, 10 years old. Birthday's about 3 weeks away from each other. He's going to come up later on in the conversation. Down in San Antonio, worked for a team running Allison Legacies. I won't say worked for, volunteered for, friends with them. You never know what happens when you talk to people and you find out what they're doing, and hang out with them at a racetrack, start turning wrenches, doing who knows what.
Cool.
Come up here to tinker, hang around up here for a while, try to figure out what's happening. A buddy of mine through the Air Force, Zach Baumgardner, was autocrossing a Nissan.
I remember that thing.
Yep. Yep. He's still at it. He's still got the Nissan, but I'm pretty sure he's got a Honda right now. Honda
Okay.
SI. Is that right? Something to
Sure.
that point. Um, but he brings me out to autocross a couple times. I show up out there. I never run anything. Fast forward to uh, getting the Legends equipment out of my dad's garage after he passed on. And I said, hey, why not? There's nothing really around here for Legends racing except road racing. And I wasn't really thinking I was into that at the time. So I take the Legends out to autocross a few times and try to figure it out and had some fun with it. I still think to this day that Nathan is the only other person than me to drive the Legends at the autocross track. And he
Good
made
job, Nathan.
he may have made two passes with it, but I know he spun the first time because his knees were in the steering wheel, which if you sit in a
Yeah, I
Legends
bet.
car, you might understand that, especially if you try to fit Nathan into my seat.
Mhm.
It might be a little height difference on us.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure he ran twice because the second time we changed the steering wheel to put a smaller steering wheel on it for him.
Nice.
Again, those things that you do with just on a whim. Yeah, I got a smaller steering wheel in the trailer. Let's it's 3 bolts, change the steering wheel and go with it. Um, Followed up autocross a couple times. Went out, watched the guys at Hallett with the Legends. Went out there, been having fun with it ever since.
Nice. And so this is a Legends car that your father had, and you've been running that car ever since?
Yes. So the Legends equipment I have, the car I autocrossed with in the beginning was the car he actually ran the dirt track up in Wisconsin with.
Wow.
That car has a long past with it. It started out as a road racing car, actually had a NASA logbook with it for a while. Got sold off to somebody who modified it into a sand dragster. I have no idea. It must be a
Why?
Northeastern thing. I'd go out and have fun with a Legends car and throw some paddle tires on it and stuff. Then Dad bought it, and he ran that thing, I believe, 7 seasons on the dirt track, um, on and off. Well, he had the car 10 years, so probably 7 years of running it up there. Uh, well used, well abused chassis. If you imagine running a dirt track that's going to be bent, everything else. Uh,
Yeah.
he had purchased another chassis to move everything over to. He never got to that, so the car I'm actually running at Hallett right now was his car that he never got put together.
That's a very cool story, man. Wow.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
Hmm.
And that's car, what is it, 93? Is that right? Did I get the number right?
96.
96. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's fun. And so it's spec'd out. You've got the older motor. We were talking to Bobby Christensen a few podcasts ago. Um, but yeah, so you've got, is a 4-cylinder
It's
Kawasaki?
4-cylinder air-cooled Yamaha,
Yamaha. Okay.
an
Yeah.
FJ 1200 series, XJR 1250. The difference in those two is the 1200 I can work on myself. I can rebuild it all I want to. The 1250 is a sealed motor by
Gotcha.
INEX rules. Hallett, I'm not sure how much they really care about it, but I'm trying to make sure to, our out-of-town guys show up. I don't want them thinking everybody at Hallett cheap. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to run where I can. In fact, my garage week over this past weekend was to take out the 1200 and put a sealed 1250 in.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
Just having one of those kind of years. 4 weeks up at Hallett so far, and this will be motor number 3 going in the car. And came home one time with it not running because of the clutch basket blown up. So I've
Yeah.
come home one weekend with a car that was actually still okay to take back to the racetrack.
Brian, I got to say something. One time, I think one of the first weekends I ever hung out with you, I just saw the coolest, like, all hands on deck, attempt to get you on track from your competitors. Like, you're suiting up to get back on track. You've got this stripped out, I guess, cam bolt, right?
Yeah.
Or cap bolt.
Yep.
And, and you're fighting with that thing. It keeps coming loose. You're messing with it all weekend. And then they come and, like, helicoil this thing with a mini vacuum and fix this freaking block or head, like, on the fly while he's getting suited up and getting put in the car, and then they put him out on track. I'm like, this is the wildest
That's crazy.
wildest thing in the world.
Awesome.
Yeah, so there's just such a cool community up there, and really inspiring what you guys got going on up there.
Well, I think for some of the competitors that you're more friendly with in Lemons, I think it's the same thing. If they've got
Sure.
something, you're going to be there to help them.
Yeah.
It's one thing to win a race, but it's not as fun to win a race because there's nobody else out there. You want people out there.
Yeah, that's fair.
It-
You
it's
ever
the
done
same
any
thing.
lemons racing?
I have not. The closest I've come to multi-class was before they split us off from the Spec Miatas, PAPS and SM bunch up at Hallett. I was there for my first weekend in the old car in the bubble coupe when I went up there.
Mhm.
And as a new guy to road racing and still trying to figure out the track and everything else, that was I was slow. Nobody else was, it seemed like, and just trying to figure it out. Especially that first morning practice session. I'm out there at one point, the sun's glaring in front of me. I turn, the sun's glaring behind me. Where'd this guy go? Where'd this guy come from? Is this the same guy? So I can't imagine Lemons race when you're talking, what, 50, 60 cars out there?
120
or more.
Yeah.
Or more.
Yeah.
Hopefully you got the advantage of radios, but I know you can't spot the whole track out there. And
Not typically.
I don't think that's
Yeah.
You gotta get pretty good at your own track awareness with your mirrors and your ears.
and that has come up tremendously over the 4 years I've been doing this, which is good. But you also got to remember, I'm sure in lemons racing you're aware of this as you go out there. You got that many cars and drivers out there. Somebody out there is running their first race weekend.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
And you got to be aware of. You never know if that's the guy you're passing right now or not. So there's both sides of it. You got to be aware of who's coming up to you. You've got to be aware of who you're coming up to.
Yeah.
Yeah. The funny part is he's not aware of it either.
Yeah. I think that's there's a lot of accidents that happen because both sides just didn't even have a clue. And
Sure.
I've come in from some Legends racing. When the first 2 years I ran Legends, they still had the breakout of Legends and Legends Pro at Hallett.
Right.
So I was with the Legends, the beginners, which is right. And I came in, I remember coming in from one event and I talked to somebody. I'm like, man, you guys were running great. That was awesome. Being right there for the battle. You guys were chopping it up. And I was just waiting to see if there was a hole going to open up, see where I could dive into. And they said, oh, what place did you finish? I'm like, right behind you two. Like I was pushing you down the straightaway for the most part when you were making moves on other people. And they were so locked into the battle of those two that they didn't comprehend a car had joined the battle.
Yeah.
And that's the beginner mentality though, it's hard to realize, you might be battling for this, but how long has it been since you checked the mirrors and see what's back there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tracking a lot of objects out there, that's for sure. Well, we got to get you out into a lemons car someday, but that'd be awesome. And you do a ton of races too. I'm very impressed. Like do you still autocross pretty consistently, or are you doing mostly Hallett?
I think I've only been to 2 autocrosses this weekend. For local events here in OKC, I skipped one, doing some yard work and some concrete work in the back, trying to get some patio stuff done. And I think the only other one I really skipped was a Tulsa event. Didn't want to make the drive out there. And this year, the only events that I have done, I've actually done in the wife's car. We got her a different car over the winter and go out there and try F Street instead of F Mod.
Okay. What car is that? Just real quick.
2020 BMW 330i.
Perfect.
Kind of base model for a 330i, but I'm pretty impressed with it, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a good car.
It took me a while. It's one of those things, again, it's probably in the manual somewhere, but there's the button to turn off certain things, but holding the button does something completely different, and that took me a while to figure out. Didn't know this, but you can turn off traction control without turning off stability control. And stability control just takes away so much stuff. Finally figured out how to turn all of it off and made almost a 2-second difference on the track.
Oh wow.
I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah. You can't be having any of that stability out there.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I'd like to move on.
Okay.
You've got you've entered this new part of your career. I think I'm really excited to hear about this. You've gone to work for an ARCA team, I believe, and you're doing some spotting. But maybe if you could just tell us a little bit more about that. I want to hear all about spotting and some of the techniques, tips, and tricks, how you got into it. It just seems like a really cool way to get engaged with racing.
So first off, let me clarify. I'm not spotting now, and I never
Okay.
actually did spot in the ARCA series.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I got it
In
all
the
wrong.
ARCA series, a few years back, when Mason Mitchell, who I said earlier raced with my
Yeah.
daughter, when he was running his team up there, there were a few events I showed up, and I was more a tire specialist, tire
Okay.
pressures, tracking, matching sets, trying to get that stuff going. Um, and previous to him getting into ARCA, when he was running late model series stuff, ASA, with the ASA debacle between ASA late model series and ASA that exists now, as well as ASA Midwest series, all those, he ran some what you consider basically pro late model stuff.
Okay.
And because of the track relationship and everything else and everything, his dad called me up and a few times said, "Hey, we're going to start this, and we need some crew help. We need somebody to be in the pits." And end up going to Milwaukee, working the pits with him while his dad was spotting. Did some stuff with trying to think where else we went to that I was on the box, but basically, general garage stuff with him. And one trip we were going to was Indianapolis Raceway Park, now O'Reilly Raceway Park. And I was on the way there. This was not a paid gig whatsoever. They covered transportation costs and
Sure.
lodging, so I would show up and help out to help a 13-year-old run a late model car, which is, if I could have done that at 13, it would have been crazy. But we're on the way there, and my flight was delayed, so I'm talking to him. We're now in the stage where cell phones are out there, so we can talk and communicate a little better. And he's like, "Okay, well, here's the plan. We'll do this, this, and this." Typical. They were running late too, getting the car there, but adjusting on the fly. I'm sure you guys have never had to do that as a race team.
No.
No, we show up and roll it off the double stacker right onto the track, and
Yeah.
we're good to go.
Of course,
Mhm.
yeah. And you got 18 or 20 people around to help push it and everything else.
Oh yeah.
So found out our crew for that weekend at O'Reilly Raceway Park was going to be 2 teenagers that went to high school with Mason as crew members.
Reliable.
Me and his dad. So 4 members. And his dad ends the phone conversation with, "And by the way, you're spotting him this weekend because I'm not talking to him on the radio anymore."
Okay.
They had run a local race in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. They wrecked the car. I mean, when I say they wrecked the car, when I saw this car roll out of the trailer, I'm like, "Wow, you guys did a fair job of trying to match a template, but this is not going to pass." So, and I know what they were doing too. It's no secret everybody tries to cheat and pull things around a little bit. So tried to play the first year card. We're new at this. We don't know what we're doing. So if we pull the nose back, it brings up the front a little bit, gives us a little more downforce. But it might be okay to be a half inch off or an inch off. But when your nose is 3 inches off, it's noticeable and it has to get fixed. But anyways, back to the story. He ends the conversation with, "You're spotting for him this weekend." So my introduction was, "You're at the racetrack. Go jump up there and start spotting for him in a late model race."
Okay. Gotcha.
So
How'd that go?
We have a team that's learning how to be a team while I'm learning how to be a
Mhm.
spotter while the driver's learning how to drive. How bad can it be, right?
Sure.
Anyways, we
What's
finished
the worst thing that could happen?
What is the worst thing that could happen? No, don't answer that. So we go through, had some more car issues. Turns out that one thing that was missed in the wreck was the steering box. While it was moving okay, was not functional for power steering at speed. So that took out our practice time, took out our qualifying time. He starts the race from the back, which is typically of where we were probably going to be expected to be anyways. Moves up a few positions. Spend the year not really being front runners, but learning, which is good, and everything. Along the way, learn how to advise him on traffic behind him, in front of him, everything else. I think everything is a relationship, because typically a driver spotter, you don't really want to have those arguments on the radio during the race. You want to, if sometimes you got to chalk the note up and say, okay, we're going to come back and talk to this one. And if you haven't heard from NASCAR radio or Formula One radio or any other radio, sometimes the driver's not the one that's going to be able to just let it go, so somebody else has to, right?
Yeah.
So luckily, me and Mason had a relationship back for, at this point, 5-6 years. Back to when he was racing against my daughter, which was a misnomer, because he was racing and my daughter was driving in circles. There was a difference. His dad even came to us one time and said, "Can we let him run with the adults as long as we keep him out of the way?" We're like, "Yeah, you're on the radio with him. Keep him out of the way. He's 10 years old. We're adults." Didn't realize the way he was going to keep him out of the way was to just have him run away from us and be done. But anyways, we had that on-track relationship, so we could talk to each other a little bit. Finished the season. I think last race of the year for us was at Iowa, which would be a home race for him. Along the way, spotted at Nashville Fairgrounds, Nashville Superspeedway, O'Reilly Raceway Park, Iowa, Rockingham. I got to say, and this goes back a little bit too, Rockingham was probably the one that I appreciated the most, was going back to Rockingham. Part of the story I missed, grew up in the Florida Panhandle. However, the last year my dad was in the Air Force decided he was going to be at Pope Air Force Base in North Carolina. That year was basically 1984 to 85. Beginning of the 85 season, Dad took me to the NASCAR race at Rockingham. Got to see back when Darrell Waltrip and Neil Bonnet were running the Budweiser cars. Jeff Bodine, Dale Earnhardt, the Chevy Monte Carlos at the time, Bill Elliott in the Coors Thunderbird. So that was the first race I went to, and to come back, 16, 17 years later, and to stand up on the spotter stand at Rockingham and be there, it was just it pulled a little bit inside, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's always cool when you get to go and race at the whatever your level is, what you consider to be the big tracks, right? I mean,
right.
Or the the first time you play, if you grow up playing sports, and heck, even you just get to like run onto an NFL field or something like that, on a field trip or something like that. It's just I remember the first time I was at Notre Dame Stadium, as a kid, like in the middle of the summer. I was like, man, this is so cool. So, but it's even better when you get to actually race there,
Yeah.
Right.
Not at a football field.
So one of the other tracks was Gateway International. Yes, we did. We did run the late model series there, which is really cool to be up on the spotter stand there and turn around and see the arch right behind it.
Yeah.
Very cool. So that relationship is something, and at the same time, you got to know the level that you're spotting for and everything else. I think there's a lot of flack for spotters out there for what they do or don't say, and the spotter's got a job out there. And that job is not the same for every spotter.
Right.
A lot of people, in my opinion, think it's just easy. You tell them who's out there and let the driver figure it out. Sometimes that is the job. Sometimes the job is to tell the driver what to do. There's some clear-cut points where spotters have to tell the driver what they need to do because they don't have time to explain the why. Just do it.
Right.
And your different levels, your Friday night tracks, Saturday night tracks, where dad's spotting for a son, where you've got a friend spotting for you, potentially your asphalt tracks where a street stock guy will be spotting for a late model guy who's then spotting back for the street stock guy when it's his turn. That type of thing. Your spotters and your drivers may not have the same trust, definitely don't have the same trust that a NASCAR team would have.
Right.
I mean, a NASCAR team, your spotter knows that the driver is going to react, knows the timing between it, knows if he says go now, it's going to go, the spot's going to be there, because they live in that area of inches where they have to make that move or else they lose a spot. And it potentially not one spot. They are
Yeah.
going to lose multiple spots. They're going to go from a top 5 car to running in 15th and then spend the rest of the race just trying to get to a top 10. Whereas a Friday night short track, you may say, okay, it's clear, and it's still going to be clear for a while. You're not constantly saying clear, 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 clear. Now he's there, because that driver's, going to take his time moving potentially, and that's a difference. I'll go back to, I know this is probably old news, the NASCAR Kyle Larson with his spotter Tyler Mon. If you didn't hear that in the news from a month and a half ago, Tyler Mon caught some flack over what he said under a yellow about the way Kyle Larson was letting somebody else do things. Basically, he came out to the point, got on the radio, and said, he did that to you again. He does that to you every time. And do you know why? It's because you let him. And there's, media got a hold of that little sound clip, and one of the headlines was Hendrick's $100,000 employee better watch his mouth talking to the superstar. And I read that differently. Is a spotter's job is to tell the driver where he's messing up. Hey, you're messing up because you're 3 inches too high going into the corner. You're not flipping the apex right in a road race. You're not down on the groove. You're coming off the corner too fast or something, or coming off the corner too soon. What the spotter's got to tell the driver how to do better. And the spotter sees a year-long relationship of, that's a driver that has done this to you all year, and you haven't done anything. And I know that sounds dangerous, because what can the driver do? It sounds like the solution is there's going to be car contact. I would like to think, though, that level up there, there's potential to say you can pass a message without wrecking somebody. And I think that's the point where Tyler was trying to get Kyle Larson to figure out was, hey, it is time. It is time that it is not easy for him to continuously do that. He needs to know what he's doing. He needs to know you're not happy about it, unless you're happy about it. If you're happy about it, just let it keep going.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, they're competitive racers because they love just being passive and.
Right.
But it's really interesting what you say there, because I'd never really thought of, and maybe I don't follow a lot of cup and circle track racing, but when I do, and you hear the spotters, I'd never thought of it as you're describing it, or at least as I'm hearing it from you, which is there can be a level of in-track coaching that's going on at the same time. It's not just clear left, clear right, but definitely, some coaching. I think what an asset that would be, to have, someone who knows what they're talking about, watching you in real time and being able to tell you, okay, like when we think about it, road racing, like, next time you come around, turn, 2-3 at Barber, you need to make sure you are, half a car off of the inside curb until you get to, that tree. And then you need to be, rolling it out, into the gas, less steering, and out onto the curb on the left, before you climb the hill. Because every time you get out there and do it, you're leaving 5 feet and not 3 feet, and it's costing you a second and a half every lap. And it would be, what a tremendous asset that would be to have somebody doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, if we cared about
Absolutely.
our lap times in Lemons.
Well, the same thing could be said if that spotter's in your ear describing the car coming up to you. And the same thing, if you got vision on one corner,
Yeah.
and that car that's coming up to you, every time he closes 2 car lengths because he's doing this, he's running this line over here.
Yep.
If it's late enough in the game where it matters, you may say you need to adjust your line and come down. It might not be the fastest line, but you come down half a car length. If you come inside half a car length,
Yeah.
you're gonna stop him from getting that run.
Yep.
Keep him behind you down the straightaway, and that's what they're doing. They're watching so much, watching what the other cars are doing, watching what their car is doing, knowing where they're gaining track time, where they're losing it, where they need to run. It's crazy, but even Iowa Speedway, 7/8 mile track, they
Yeah.
are out there watching, and they know how far up a car can get before the air starts to play with the nose of the car behind him. And it's one of those things. You might slow you down a tenth to run a different line, but if you run in his line and take his air away, it's going to slow him down. It's 2/10.
Mm-hmm.
So it's time to give up a tenth to cost him 2/10
Right.
to keep them from catching you. But don't do that before it affects them. Don't do that when you're 20 car lengths away from each other. Wait until he's up there about 5 or 6 car lengths back. And that's all the science that they've got to study and know what to do, how to direct the driver. And so late model spotting, again, you've got to know, are the drivers stable enough that you're going to tell your driver what to do around them? The equivalent of, do you
Right.
know every Lemons car out there and know exactly what braking point they're going to hit, exactly when they're going to make their turn in, everything else? It's difficult. Where the NASCAR guys, 36 cars out there, primarily 30 to 34 of them, the same every week, the same spotters every week. You get to know
Yeah.
how they're going to act. You know who's going to come off the corner and purposely push you a little bit wide, and you know who's going to give you space.
Yeah.
Yeah. In Lemons, it's more like, do you know exactly where that Citation is going to lose its oil filter?
Right.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Hey, Brian, do you feel like you have at the level you're talking about where you're participating, pretty consistent communications equipments? Like, is all that stuff working all the time, or are you always monkeying with it?
For what I did with the late model stuff,
Yeah.
we had a very good set of radios, team radios. I never got to the point where I myself as a spotter owned my own equipment.
Mhm.
It was the team set, typically very high quality Motorola setup. Again, we're talking difference of asphalt tracks of 1 mile, mile and a half, versus a road course where you're who knows how far along. I've
Yeah.
heard your discussion on putting a radio set in a car. Do you need a ground plane? Do you not need a ground plane?
Yeah.
All those different things out there. Luckily enough, with where I've been in, it has been just the standard handheld, very simple radio on top of fiberglass body.
Are the
Easy
drivers
setup.
do the drivers use earplugs, or do they get cans in the helmet, or do you know what they're doing there?
Most all of them are using custom fit molded earplugs.
Okay.
The harness in the car, push to talk on the wheel, of course. The harness is going to connect to the radio. It's going to connect up to the helmet. The helmet actually
Mhm.
connects to the earplug, so you can put, your earplugs plugged into the helmet, get in the car, and then you just have one connection to the helmet from the car.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's what we
the
do. Yeah.
microphone's built into the helmet.
Yeah.
Um,
I'd be really interested if you have any idea, any insight into what kit you guys are running in your cars, from a car harness or earplugs or anything like that. If you could drop a link in the chats, I mean, that'd be really valuable information to use, because I mean we're monkeying around, and we might be to the end of our rope on monkeying around with janky radios. I mean, it can be so valuable, and inevitably there's either no ears or no mic, or or something, and it could really, if we're trying to party at the pointy end of the field, then we need all the help we can get.
right. Again, this is going to go back into my memory banks, but I'm pretty sure all the harnesses were all racing electronics harnesses.
Okay.
If they were, I mean, again,
I'll check it out.
you're talking potentially in the late model series, a team that's out there, um, a race weekend going through 4 sets of tires is, at that time we were talking, I think $800-900 a set of tires.
Yeah.
And that's just to get through the weekend. That doesn't mention time on the engine, everything else. When you're going through all that, to try to cut corners by saying we can save a couple $100 on a harness. I'm pretty sure everybody just went to straight up racing electronics and say,
Yeah.
here's what we have, put it in the car.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I'm with you there. Yeah. And you guys renting motors? Or you building your own motors back then, or what are you doing there?
At that time, it was a sealed motor before the Short Track Seal Alliance came out. So it was basically the Chevy small block 604, 350, 380 cubic inch, whatever it is. They're all spec, all sealed. If you ever had to break into a motor, you had to send it back to be sealed, or have one of the, I think there were 3 in the country that could seal it. We actually had to have one of those at Nashville Fairgrounds to come out to our pit. We had to drop the oil pan off of it, busted an oil line and wasn't sure what damage it did to the bearings. So instead of running it, we had somebody nearby that was on the authorized seal list in Nashville and basically paid him to lay under with us to make sure that we dropped the oil pan, changed the bearings, put the oil pan back on, and he put a seal on it. But
Persnickety.
yeah.
Did you? Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
As opposed to the Legends cars right now, which all the sealing is done in North Carolina. So
Yeah, I guess that is
we
nice.
send them off.
Yeah, it is nice to have track support.
For what it's worth, if you just go to sealalliance.org on your browser, that's actually about ocean mammals.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Do they have any seal oil
Well, probably in the seals.
in the seals, but not for sale?
No, I don't see as I scroll across the banner here. There's no shop where they sell the constituent parts of the seals. I think it's to support wildlife.
I
Murphy,
see.
not weirdo foodie habits.
I'll buy some seal burgers if it'll help support the seals, man. I mean, come on.
You got to do something with your used seals, right? I mean,
Yeah.
reduce, reuse, recycle. Come on, ocean mammalia.
We digress. So
low heat on those, or else they get really, really sticky on the grill.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh,
pro tip. All right, Brian. So you're
save that for our spin-off Razors HQ seal cooking podcast.
Cooking pod. Yeah. All right, Brian. So we need to get this wrapped up here before too long. But you're, anything else to add from kind of this journey? You're doing the circle track with this younger driver you've been working with for a while. Where's that all gone now? I mean, any other lessons learned or hot takes from that experience?
So I've stayed in touch with Mason, still good friends with him. He's running dirt track trucks up in Iowa right now. He did 2 ARCA races this year. A few weeks ago, the Iowa ARCA race that was the same as the Cup and Xfinity weekend. I was up there. He was nice enough to invite me to the pits and see the team he was with there. Not his team anymore. He's with another team.
Yeah.
But still real fun to be around the racetrack with him. Seeing young man grow up from when he was 9 years old to, that's been 20 years. So 29, 30 years this year.
Wow. Yeah.
Been quite an adventure for him. Still have fun. I still like to hit up the tracks when I can, whether it's here local, Red Dirt Raceway. There's always something to go find, walk through the pits. There's going to be somebody that I just look around and say, hey, this guy looks like he's trying to do it all himself. Maybe he just needs help dragging a jack somewhere, and start talking to him, and who knows.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's the way to be. I could learn a lesson from that, Brian. I usually just wait till somebody comes and talks to me, but good for you. I feel like Eric does a good job of that too, like running around and socializing in the pits. So, no, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, Brian, I see you've got. Is this one of your favorite NASCAR drivers on your shirt? You've got
Actually, this evening I was thinking about jumping in the garage afterwards. So this is an old work shirt that's
Oh,
all
okay.
tattered and everything. But yeah, it's a Mark Martin shirt from back when he was running the U.S. Army car. Mark was my driver in the 80s and 90s, and even though he went to Chevy and then from there got a U.S. Army sponsorship instead of an Air Force sponsorship, it's still okay.
Well, I want to make a proposal for you here, Brian. Don't go working in the shop in those shirts, okay? There is a hipster vintage shop right down the street from me. Those things are worth like $2.50 a piece. So I will buy you all the undershirts you want. I'll get you Racers HQ gear if you need it. But we need to go sell off all your old antique NASCAR shirts to buy you some tires.
That's right.
Yeah,
There's a skinny
if you think this is
22-year-old
worth,
girl in Oklahoma City that's just dying to wear that out to the club.
True.
uh, and the holes that are in this shirt already should probably get tagged for indecent exposure.
All right.
No
Even
way.
better.
That's what makes it authentic and valuable.
Yeah.
Oof.
We'll talk later. Well, very
All right.
cool. Any other, Brian, any other shout outs? Anybody you'd like to thank? Anybody else we need to know about?
Well, the wife's supporting me with everything. When you go up to Hallett these days, she pulls the camper up there, so we have a place to stay. I pull the race trailer.
Sweet.
Spend the weekend up there having fun. She supported me all along the way, as I told earlier in the story. She's just amazing. The support that she gives me, greatly appreciated. My three daughters, Catherine, Christina, and Brianna. Anytime they're at the track, they're learning. I've got a soon-to-be son-in-law that last time up there at Hallett wanted to make sure he learned how to help me change a tire to get me back on the track. And then after the race was over, went practiced and wants to make sure he can help out next time. Just great support from the family. Everybody else around the Hallett Legends group, as you say, I think everybody has worked on everybody's car up there. That's the way it is to get
Yeah.
things going. I've got pictures of Kevin Kunkel with his welder out of his trailer in my pit stall while he's still wearing his driver's suit on the ground, welding the back end, the rear axle assembly of my car so it'll stop leaking oil and get me back on the track. And it's a great group of people to be with.
Yeah, that's
Awesome.
awesome. That's an awesome team. Mulry, any shout outs for the week?
I'd like to thank the Seal Alliance for supporting ocean mammals.
Yeah. Thank you, Seal Alliance.
I think somebody's got to do it, right?
So
Italy-
for
and they also-
clarification, the SEAL Alliance I'm talking about is a Sealed Engine Alliance something that runs down in the southeast part of the U.S. It's about 3 or 4 engine builders that got together and said, we're going to do this and still be able to sell our racing engines, but on a fair basis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just had to clarify.
No,
stop
thank you,
clubbing
yeah.
baby seals.
Yeah. Well, there'll be no clubbing of baby seals or, yeah.
They
anyway.
also don't sell clubs or other implements of torture on sealalliance.org. As far as I can tell.
Okay, good.
You'll have to go to the dark web sealalliance.org for that and your seal oil needs. Murphy.
No desperate sailors or anything like that.
That's a whole different level of internet search, and I'm not going to support that either.
Oh, anyway. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Brian, thank you so much for coming on the pod tonight. We want to have you back
You're
on.
welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I've been toying with this idea for a while, and I think you reached out to me. I appreciate that. Reminded me that we need to get you on here, and I think it was a success. So, Pat, thanks again for your time as always. A lot of good questions there, and some good comic relief. So, you can check us out. I'm currently sponsored by my Facebook Marketplace. So if you need like a BMW with 200,000 miles on it, or a 2-stroke scooter, anything like that, hit me up. And
luggage for your ATV.
Luggage for your ATV, yeah. I've already been doing some wheeling and dealing. It looks like ATV stays in the tarp family, and just more movement of parts and scooters. So
That's right.
Yeah, wheeling and dealing on the FB Marketplace, but yeah, hit me up. It's actually a pretty nice BMW. Anyway, all right, that's all I got though. Check us out on racershq.com. A big shout out to Chris Blizzard for resharing our podcast to his group of friends on Facebook. I tell you, the racing community is the only reason I'm on Facebook. So Facebook, if you're listening,
Amen.
if Zuck's listening, you owe us all a lot of money or ad space or something. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I expect a check, okay? Or a sponsorship package. But yeah, also on X now. I went back on X. We don't need to get into this. But yeah, check us out. You know where to find us. And we will
And the
see you.
YouTubes. Don't forget the YouTubes.
The YouTube, it's the working man's Apple Podcast, I guess.
That's
But
right.
people love it. So yeah, check us out. It's just a picture of our logo and us chatting, but that's all you get. You get what you pay for, right? Anyway, all right. Well,
We're just training the AI of the future.
I mean, it's done some amazing AI things. It's suggesting us to people that it must have just heard their name on our podcast. It's kind of gross and creepy. But
Oh, maybe we should start mentioning names, and then they'll contact us, and we could have Tom Cruise come on our podcast, talk about what it was really like to make Days of Thunder, and then we would get 16 views on our YouTube channel instead of 5.
I like this. That sounds like monetization. Cha-chang. Anyway, all right. Well, like and subscribe and rate and review, and we'll see you guys at the track. Bye, everybody.
Night, Dave.